Hello, everyone. Welcome to this one-off session that we're having today. It's a super important conversation. We wanted to make sure it was available to anyone that wanted to talk about it. And that is creating that transformative life that can come with starting your own RIA and running it the way that feels most true to you. I've talked to a lot of advisors over the years, and one of the most, Shannon, Cliff's right here, of course. Where Cliff is, Shannon is. The reason that we want to host this conversation is that sometimes as advisors get into this, we get distracted by the new shiny object, the revenue growth, the valuation of our firms, things like that, and we miss the opportunity to leverage this experience as an entrepreneur to our own human benefit. How can we actually become better people? How can we achieve more alignment? How can we feel like we're living more fulfilling, beautiful, and whole lives, complemented by the work that we do through running your own firm? And I have two fabulous XYPN members here to join the conversation, really lead the conversation. I am Maddy Roche. I'm XYPN's Executive Business Coach, one of them. I'll facilitate this conversation. Boekeloo has been with us for a number of years. He's been running a very successful firm in Portland?
Yeah, Vancouver, Washington.
Vancouver, Washington. Okay. And then we have Lynch, who's relatively new to the scene, but has already gotten her name dropped in a couple sessions for her niche. You're the tiny house advisor, and you are based?
I'm in transition from Florida out west to New Mexico.
Beautiful. Okay. Let's go ahead and start with a poll just so that we can get a pulse on who's in the audience. I appreciate you all having engaged just minutes ago. We are also going to be using that Slido option, so you guys can submit questions anonymously or just with your name, and then you can upvote the questions that you would like answered. I've prepped with these two some core questions I think we should talk through, but ultimately this is a conversation for all of you, primarily those of you who have maybe not tapped into that experience of what can I get more out of when I do this? What more alignment can I get, more success, things like that. So what would help you live your best life? Just take a moment and think about if you could have your best life, is it more time and ability to work from places? Is it to work with clients how you want? Is it family and friends? I don't see puppy, but mine would be puppy. Less oversight of my work, providing more value to clients. Where do we fall? Any of you who are actively doing life planning, I don't think this answer surprises you. 60% of you are saying that you'd like to spend more time with family and friends. I like that. 30% to work with the clients how I want to and with whom I want to. I would say from experience, those are the top two reasons we see people start their own firms, is the flexibility that you get and the desire to serve the people that you feel like you can bring value to and be in flow with. So go ahead and jump over to Slido. Thanks for voting. This is a really fun platform. Go ahead and submit some questions and we'll get there. But we've got an hour together. Please be vulnerable. Please be open. Please ask the questions that you want to ask because this is your time. If you're not leveraging live this way, you're doing it wrong. I would first like to punt it to our speakers. Just introduce yourselves, your firm. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll kind of get into the meat of the conversation. Laura, I'll start with you.
So as we mentioned just a minute ago, I'm Laura Lynch. I have launched the Tiny House Advisor in Florida. Doesn't align with my values. Moving out west does align with my values. That was entirely created through my ability to work with clients remotely and kind of forced out of my prior role into launching my firm in order to align with my lifestyle, align with my values, and create a business around what I'm really passionate about.
Beautiful. Jay?
Yep, my name is Boekeloo, and I'm based in Vancouver, Washington. I have High Note Financial. I was previously a musician, but I work with veterinarians. My wife is a veterinarian, and now after today, where somebody said niche weird or something like that, and so I thought, okay, well, maybe veterinarians that want to own their own businesses. So niching down a little further today. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
Good. One of the reasons, as I said, people get into this is to get more flexibility. Some of us may be doing that 9-to-5 grind that feels very 1990. I think some of us are really realizing that is not how our life should be. Can each of you paint us a picture of where you were 5 or 10 years ago? What were you doing? What was on your heart and mind? What was keeping you from, I'm getting into too many questions. Let's talk past 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, so I was just reflecting on this last night. 5 years ago, September of 2018, I was networking my ass off, right? Like building my branch at a broker-dealer firm, waking up in the morning, going to a breakfast meeting at the Business Alliance, all the way through happy hour, and really building a business to create profits for, somebody other than myself. I was also studying all the time, trying to expand my knowledge so that I could build my confidence. So credentials every year. So it was a very intense level of work.
Jay?
So before I was in this industry, I was working as a professional musician. I was a singer-songwriter, did a lot of production, and I loved it. It was great. But I started to, eventually I married my wife, who is, as I said, a veterinarian, and she came out of school with like $200,000 of debt. And what I saw was this person who has given her entire life to helping us with our loved ones, our animals. And yet we would go out to eat, and she would go, should we be doing this? We have student loan debt. And to me, I was like, this is not a quality of life that she should have to live, especially somebody who I think is just amazing. And so the more I spoke with her, the more I realized like her peers were having the same issues. And so that's when I was like, all right, music was really about me. I was like writing my feelings and sharing it to the world. And I became kind of a little egocentric maybe. And so I wanted to balance that. Whereas I felt going into financial planning was giving myself, and it was about them. So that's what kind of made me transition. Now, specifically 5 years ago, that's when I actually got into the industry. So my story is a little different in that High Note Financial started as just an LLC. I worked as a 1099 under somebody else's ADV. And they were kind enough to say, build your book of business, because I'm not interested in working with young people. I want all these people with assets, and they were just doing the traditional route. And so I said, okay, so I started building my business and then launched just last year and took them all with me. So that's how my story progressed.
Great. Thanks for that. Yeah. Laura, can you talk to us a bit about what was drawing you to starting your own firm? When did you realize it was an option and how that started?
This is my favorite story. So, couple of things were drawing me. One was the geography piece. So I learned at my firm that, moving wasn't an option. And so I guess I felt, kind of stuck in a geography that I wanted to get out of. I grew up in the mountains. I want to get back to the mountains. I want to be close to the earth. I want to be out in nature. And so when I figured out that I wasn't going to be able to move my my branch out west, that was a major sort of straw with the camel thing. And then the CFP program helped me remove my silo blinders, because I was really I spent 5 years just really immersed in the culture and the learning and the progression of my career at the firm that I was at. And I had paid no attention to the industry broadly. I came from an outside industry. I didn't know any of this existed. So I just thought that was the only path for me. So a colleague ironically mentioned, because I was always hungry for more knowledge, mentioned Michael Kitces to me. And so I was driving up north, up I-75, visiting family and some clients along the way. And I'm like, let me check out what this Michael Kitces guy is doing. So I listened to a podcast episode, and then I got to a hotel in Georgia, and I'm like, let me see what else he's doing, how we do our research. And I looked on LinkedIn, and I'm like, what is this XY thing? And so then I encountered the podcast. And so then on my continued drive, I started binging the podcast. And literally, the earth shifted on its axis, and I flushed, and I oh my gosh, this thing that I can do. And so I scheduled my first call with Eli. And I remember just like feeling like this really weird out of body experience, my first conversation with her, like the possibility that I could be my own firm and I could do it my way was just, it was just, revolutionary, right?
Anyone have a similar experience? Nice. Yeah. Transformative. Jay, you were 1099, now you are out on your own. What, in terms of your best life and being able to live it, what did that shift do for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I was talking to my roommate, Brian. Shout out to Brian here in the front here. But I was trying to figure out because, did I feel a shift? Did I feel like I was ever out of alignment? And I don't know. I think sometimes I have a tendency to look back with rose-colored glasses. I was like, oh no, I always had it figured out. But the reality is that I did, when I thought about it, because Brian was kind of questioning me deeper, I think that I was losing sight of my long-term vision. Like, I love that I own my own business, but it also is a means to an end as well. For me, is like my dream is that I wake up every day and I go, what do I do today that's philanthropic? And so that would be really awesome, but I realized, wait, if I'm working for someone else, what do I do today? I'll call and ask them, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So I think that was my shift. And as I mentioned, just kind of that balance of wanting to, one of my philosophies is just saying, like, what gifts do you have that you can give to the world? And I wasn't giving it if I was just working for somebody else. I had more to give, and so I wanted to be in front of people and continue my performance, right, that I got from music. But I wanted it to be kind of on my terms. And so I just was, let's just go for it.
Beautiful. Yeah. Laura, when you go back to the 5 years ago, before the transformative experience of realizing this is a possibility, what in your life weren't you prioritizing, from personal to the professional?
Yeah, so I think that this is crazy to say, but I think the clients, right? Because I was in a situation where I was incentivized to constantly focus on bringing in assets before I provided, service. And that really the assets were the way that we were compensated, recognized. Everything was about that growth of assets. And so even though there was a lot of talk about, focus on clients, I feel like that was, kind of like the second priority. And so in this work now, I feel so much more authentic in that focus on clients. I know that the fee structure that I have set up is designed around doing what's best for clients and eliminating the incentives that will cause me to focus on other things. Personally, I wasn't able to, as I mentioned before, kind of align myself geographically with what I wanted to focus on, and frankly also have an investment philosophy around my values and how where I'd like to take my people. And a lot of the culture that I was in was so materialistic, and all of the planning was very materialistic, and the reward trips were materialistic, and the ways that we celebrated was materialistic. And so now I'm able to prioritize helping people think about aligning their money with their values.
Beautiful. Jay, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, as she's saying it, I actually was having some thoughts as well. Thank you because you're stemming some stuff. For me, I'd flip it. So where was I misaligned? My misalignment was that I was not working on the work I was supposed to be doing for somebody else because I was just more drawn to be doing what I was passionate for. And so that does create tension there. It's like, did you get that done? Well, no, I was working on my people, and so I think to your point, it's kind of like I wasn't doing their clients very good service. And that was something for me to go, okay, I am misaligned because you're going to do what you love. And so sometimes we fight that. And I just realized, like, why am I fighting this? Let's embrace it a bit more. So
Beautiful.
yeah.
Laura, in your case, how certain were you that you'd be able to do that if you went independent, if you went and started your own firm?
So, like many of us, I'm very, researchy. So my confidence certainly came from surveying the industry. So I didn't just, hop out of the car that day and like sign up with XYPN. It took me 3 rounds to commit to this.
Okay.
I went and talked to all the independent broker dealers, and I went around and talked to, the options of IAR, and I didn't even know what any of that stuff was. Like, I had to figure out what the acronyms were to begin with, right? So I definitely did my due diligence in order to build the confidence around what was the best option, because if I was going to give up my, 6-figure salary and make this leap and leave it all behind, it had to be the ultimate goal. And my husband and I, of course, talked through this a lot, and he's like, oh, just go join that other RIA firm who's going to give you the salary for a while, right? And I got so far into that negotiation process where I was sitting in front of another contract, right, employment contract, and was about to go that path, that safe path, and was like looking at, I'm not going to own my voice again. I'm not going to own my relationships again. If I leave, I won't be able to talk to these people for 3 years. I'm just hopping out of one thing and into another restrictive situation. So I'm just going to have to go, right, all the way to the other end, because it's the only way I can be confident that I can do this all the way. And I pitched my podcast idea to those folks that I was about to sign with. And they're like, oh, can you come and talk to us about this? And I'm like, no, this is my voice. This is what I'm going to do. I don't need your permission to do it, right? So I think that the confidence built, having done all the research and talked to all the different options, and then ultimately came down to, it's me. I am the only person I can trust to get it done this way.
Beautiful.
I got to commend her, because I did not leave a 6-figure job. It was easy for me to leave. So, that's amazing that you left that comfort. But sorry, and I just jumped in front of you. I'm sorry.
No, this is a dialogue.
As far as did I think that did I see success? Yeah, I did, but that's because I've really worked hard, and I think we'll touch on it later, but that I conditioned my mind to just see that. My wife would get angry because she's like, hey, you say you're an optimist, but you also have to be a realist, right? And so somebody would say, I was talking to Brian again, I do owe him a lot of this, but they said, a 1 in a million chance, so you're saying there's a chance. That's me. I'm like, how is that not realistic? There's a 1 in a million chance. And she's like, yes, but you're going to right. So to me, realist, probabilistic, I don't know, whatever that word is. But somebody who plays in probabilities is different. But it was an interesting thing. I did see success, but I definitely also was like, you have your moments of doubt. And so for me, it was just practicing to say, okay, I can do 2 things with these moments of doubt. 1, I can think and reflect on it and see how I can address it. Or 2, is it my anxiety? Is it me just worrying about it? Let it go. Brain doesn't give it any importance, because we're all going to have negative. We're all going to have positive. It's not trying to force it in one way. It's just saying which one's the most important to concentrate on, because then the neural pathways come in there and your brain goes, that's important. Let's revisit that. Well, this is full of positivity then. I've practiced that. But to be fair, if anybody else out there, if you're like that, the realists do have some really good things. So listen to them too. Say, okay, what are the things that I'm missing here? Yeah.
Well, I think you really well answered the first question that our audience had posed to us about imposter syndrome as business owner. Laura, what was your journey with imposter syndrome, and how did you get through it?
I think my journey with imposter syndrome I think I've already done that path, because I came from outside the industry, and I spent 5 years, becoming a financial advisor and doing all the credentials and all the things. And the business owner piece of things doesn't feel, and of course, again, I'm only, like 3 months into this, so who knows, but I don't feel the imposter syndrome so much now because I've already fought that battle in the past. And so I think that's where the value of having that opportunity to do this thing somewhere else first, be a financial advisor somewhere else first, really prepares you for doing it on your own. And you can kind of fight those battles of imposter syndrome and build your confidence. And I know that Alan talks about this a lot, right? That there are people who launch right out of college, but maybe having some time somewhere else is super valuable. And so I'm so glad that I got my imposter syndrome done somewhere else.
I like that framing.
Yeah.
I think that some of us can find ourselves there. We've been through that. And especially the way you were able to trust your intuition around knowing that that was your right move. I imagine that you'd kind of move through some of that imposter syndrome. Who were your mentors? Who were you looking up to? Who in the industry were you thinking, that's who I want to be? I want to mimic what they've built.
Yeah, so for me, it started psychologically. So it was like before I was even looking at the industry itself, it was preparing my mind for it. It was reading things, just general business books. Michael Gerber, with the E-Myth, really quick read. And so that resonates with me all the time where I'm saying work on your business, not in your business, things like that. Just trying to figure out you can be happy no matter what. That's a great book as well. Just kind of that's where I got that whole thought process thing. Thereafter, I was just really lucky. I actually had somebody, I was like 19 years old. I had like $500, and I went and looked up, at the time I looked at Dave Ramsey ELPs. And somebody popped up in my local area, and I went up to him, and I grilled this guy for like a half an hour of asking questions that I didn't even know what I was asking. Well, are you registered with the SEC? Who the hell is the SEC? Like, I don't know any of this. So I'm just going and asking him. And he sat there, and he let me ask all of these questions. Long story short, he took me on because he said, hey, look, $500 in your pocket. You're not quite my demographic, but I would love to tutor you. I'd love to mentor you. He ended up taking me under his wings for a little bit, and then his daughters were actually XYPN members. So shout out to Taylor Middleton and Kaylee Abascal.
Yeah.
So they were the ones who said, hey, come on, we'll give you an associate position, or actually an apprentice position first. And they were the ones who opened me to XYPN. And so I started, like you said, Kit System thing. Like, who are these people? And I actually immediately went to an XYPN conference, and I heard all these names, and I heard all of these, just all these philosophies, and I didn't know anything. I'm just like, okay, sure, I'll look it up. I'll write it down. And so, back to the imposter syndrome, 100%. I still have imposter syndrome. But I would question, because you said reframe. And imposter of what? Like, what are you an imposter of? Are you a business owner? Yes. Are you a financial planner? Yes. You're not an imposter, right? We're really, what you're doing is you're comparing yourself amongst your peers, and that's what I do. There's a gentleman right in the back there, Dan Van Duzen, shout out Dan, I rely on that guy all the time. I feel like an imposter compared to him, but compared to my clients, I'm not an imposter.
I like that. Laura, how about you?
What was the question?
Sorry.
We were past imposter syndrome. We were on to,
I brought you back. I'm sorry.
No, that's it. What's that? Oh, yeah. Who were you looking up to?
Yes, that's right. So somebody was asking me, like, have you met Cody Garrett, right? I feel like that everybody that I have met on the podcast are my mentors, because you create such a sort of close relationship with those people, right, on the podcast, which is why I launched a podcast, because podcasts have literally changed my life in two major ways, and one of them is XYPN. So everyone that has ever recorded an episode on that podcast is a mentor and a motivator, and also a person that helps me not have imposter syndrome. Because when I listen to these stories, I'm like, if they can do that, I can do that. Over and over again, if they can do it, I can do it, right? These are just regular human beings dealing with all the complexities that we're all dealing with all the time. And they all came from somewhere, and they all have a story. And, if they can do it, I can do it.
Beautiful. We've hit on this a bit, but I want to give each of you an opportunity to answer if you feel like there's more to talk about. What was your thought process and preparation around giving up your income to start fresh at your own firm? That is a big risk, it's a big jump, and a major consideration for a lot of folks here.
Yeah, so I was fortunate because I had my wife, we had to have the discussion, and she was like, yes, I'm willing to support you so long as it doesn't go past X amount of time. And then X came, and I said, well, let's push it out to Y. And she's like, all right, we can do it because I see the progress. Yeah, now I lost the question. It was
Leaving your income.
Yeah, so I was fortunate in that sense. I do have clients, right, that are making that same decision, and they have to determine, how am I going to leave my income? And there's different ways. It depends on the personality. Maybe it's somebody who wants to say, hey, for the next year, I'm going to just be working and putting away a bank, knowing that this is what I'm going to be relying on so that I can let my income ebb and flow on my own business, but give myself some time. You can reach out to different programs and things. So we go over that all the time. But as far as mindset, there's one thing that I really did want to make sure I said at some point today. You have a tendency to you're driven for something, but it's hard to keep that drive every day, all the time. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you're an introvert, journal. Because then you can go back and you can see those things and say, where was I at that time? And it reinvigorates you. If you're an extrovert, you go talk to people, you come to these events. I leave here just charged. And I think that really helps for that mindset. So,
great. Yeah. Laura, how about you?
Money.
Money.
Yeah, so the money thing is so important, right? Because the money thing is how we are motivated largely, right? If we feel like we have a time frame where we're gonna put our family's financial life in jeopardy, that can be, it changes your behaviors. So I think it is so important to figure out what the plan is. And of course, we do this with clients, like Jay mentioned, right? We help clients make career transitions. So how would you help your client make a career transition? You've got to help yourself make that career transition. And I think it is so critical to understand how your behaviors are motivated by money. And in order to stay on track with the behaviors that you know are going to be important to create the life that you love, you want to incentivize those behaviors, not the desperation behaviors. So what do you have to do to prepare yourself to not incentivize, desperation behaviors? My preparation was all about tiny living and the fact that we are going from a mortgaged house to a house that we built with our hands that cost us nothing. And so without the tiny house and the pivot to tiny, I would not have been able to launch this firm. So everything is tied together. My niche is tied to my psychological motivations towards money. It's tied to my enabling me to launch my own firm. Everything is all integrated for me. And so that was the sort of enabling of this firm, selling out of the traditional life and positioning myself financially to not have to worry so much about it.
Great.
do you ever feel do you ever have to kind of catch yourself, recalibrate a little bit, like, what am I doing? Or are you just like, nope, I can stay right at that goal that you've set?
Again, I've only been in this for like 30 seconds. This is so crazy.
30
but
seconds,
I know, just not very long. I think that there's definitely, I think that the thing that's really interesting is that sometimes we don't trust ourselves that our future behavior is going to mirror our past behavior. If you have a track record of being a highly motivated, on track with your career person, just because you leave a firm or a company or whatever, and you start your own thing, doesn't make you a different person. Your behaviors don't change. So if you have a track record of, of showing up and doing hard work and always learning and have a great heart for it and helping people, and you work hard, you don't stop doing that because you become a business owner, but you have to remind yourself, I am still the same person, and I'm going to continue to do the things to be successful because that's what I've always done. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I do feel like I have to come back to that sometimes and reinforce that to myself. Laura, you're the same person. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and not work as hard as you worked the day before.
I think that's the best answer that I've heard in a long time about imposter syndrome and how to get through it. Thank you for sharing that. I'd love to talk about maybe how some things have changed. Your work ethic maybe hasn't, things like that, but you got into this for a little bit more freedom and flexibility, for a new lifestyle for both of you, to be able to be with your wife more, to live how you want to live. Can you paint us a picture of what your week looks like, from the personal side to the professional side? How do you move through the week?
Yeah, so to be completely transparent, that's why I'm here. I'm trying to figure out how I can be better about it within the week. I can't recall the author, but there was somebody who said last December there was a speaker, and he said, go for your long-term goal, break it down into smaller chunks. And a week eventually is like, okay, because he's saying, hey, you've got this long destination, but it's made up of incremental steps. Doing it daily, I have found, doesn't get me anywhere because I lose sight. Doing it by the 1 week, so I say, okay, what am I shooting for? Is it the 1 year goal, the month goal, or something? And then I go to the week out, and I just kind of pencil out, what am I going to do this week and feel accomplished? And I literally put it on a calendar, on a wall, because then I can look at it. It reminds me to stay on track. That's what I've been doing. It's been okay. I've met so many people out here that I'm like, wow, you really get it. So I'm going to try to adopt some of their things. But as far as daily life, and that's just how I approach the business. But what I have also done is I always take a break and I go work out at noon. I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I come back and I check emails. I'm not supposed to, but I do. Because I'm just kind of all right, let's get back into it. But that's been a game changer because, again, it's that balance thing, right? So I've been able to go, man, I've got this mental, emotional health. Now I have time for physical health as well, and that's been really good.
Beautiful. Laura?
Yeah, so I would say that, some, regular cadence things obviously have changed. The commute, the, 3 walks a day out, with the dogs kind of stuff. But in the deeper realm, because I don't do shallow very well, in the deeper realm, I am so freaking excited all the time.
I love that.
And, kind of doing the firm career, showing up in my appropriate suit to my W-2 role. I was living inside of I was in my turtle shell and doing what I was expected to do and, building the thing that I was expected to build. I was muted, right? My voice was muted. My ideas were muted. Everything was, not allowed. And so having this opportunity to unleash my thoughts on the world through my podcasts and the articles that I post on LinkedIn and, to be able to figure out where do I want to take my tribe that they could not go alone and what does that look like in the long term and how do I want to build out this, tiny living ecosystem and all the things. It is just so energizing and it is my purpose. And I wasn't able to live that before. And so what that means is that I'm a lot happier all the time and that, I'm driving my husband crazy with, ideas that he has to talk through with me. And my stepkid is getting to see entrepreneurship play out in front of him. And it is, changing every aspect of life and relationships. And I'm able to focus on connection in a way that I haven't been able to do. I didn't feel like I could really create friendships with clients in the past. And now I'm like looking for my tribe of clients, and I'm thinking about how those connections are going to fill me up for the rest of my life, and having that social, really important part of our mental health. And so it's just so life changing in all of those deep and meaningful ways.
Just to be clear, when she said, I don't do shallow and looked at me, it was because we had a really great conversation last night about getting deeper. She wasn't calling me shallow, were you?
She gave me a very good compliment about you before she got on stage.
Good. Yeah, I'll pay you later for it. Thank you.
You touched on it, Laura, but I'm interested in how, from an interpersonal relationship dynamic, things have evolved since you've been able to find more alignment on this side. Jay, you talked originally about your relationship with your wife. How have things changed with how you get to show up to not just your clients, but to your people?
Yeah. I feel like I get to be more genuine, as she's saying. Like, I'm here for a purpose, and I get to kind of just spread that purpose. And if somebody aligns with it, then great. I will say friends, they went like on edge because, as we all know, right? You say financial planner, and they're like, oh, here it comes. Whereas I get the opposite with my wife. Like, literally, she says veterinarian. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, can I get your card? Like, I'm like so jealous of that. So now I just on the way down the elevator, I'm like, I'm going to start saying, like, what do you do? I go, I'm a veterinarian advisor.
Yes,
Like, see if I can get them. But no, it's been really good because, like, I think as Laura was saying, is that when you're in your element, you are exuberant, you're positive, and I think that draws more of that to you. Mm-hmm. And so that's, if anything, that's the best thing to do this for, is because you are going to uplift everyone else around you because you are sitting there. So I think I've been a little better for my friends, other than when I give them the sales pitch that they don't want every once in a while.
Yeah, so you and I share this thing in common because my husband's an electrician. And everybody wants his number, right? Because there just are so few tradespeople in our area, and no one returns phone calls or shows up when they say they're going to. So this is my second major career shift, and my husband and I both describe him as a big ship that doesn't change easily. And so when I left my last career with my salary and started my financial planning career, financial advisor career, with $0 from the very beginning back in 2017, he had to experience a major change that he was a lot more resistant to. So this time, he's been able to show up for me in a way that he didn't the first time in support, which has been really amazing. So I think that created a lot greater bond with us, is having that shared support through this transition, which was really meaningful to me. And then, of course, the point about, being able to bring my clients closer to me from a, connection standpoint. And the podcast has also allowed me to connect with a lot of amazing, like-minded people and have really fulfilling conversations who I now see at the, tiny house shows and festivals and all of that. So creating that ecosystem around the niche is really meaningful to me. So I think that's great. And then, of course, this community, too, is such a meaningful connection to have, and having all these great conversations with people, like-minded advisors, because I'm now in an ecosystem of planners and advisors who aren't just focused on bringing in assets, but are focused on the deep help and service of clients.
Yeah, I will say that's one thing I commend all of you, because some of these events that we go to are just, it's kind of the same old, right? Somebody comes in, they're dressed up, they tell us, oh, here's where I work, and this is what. XYPN is so fun because everybody has a story behind it, and I just love that. So that is really a really cool thing. You will walk away with relationships. Again, Dan, we met 4 years ago. We've continued to meet every Wednesday, so I encourage you to do that. And then also, I wanted to touch, because I'm stealing something from you here, so that bond with my wife and I actually did become stronger because there's some hardships in it, right? So you have to be willing to have these conversations, be vulnerable, and it actually does bond you. But I had to learn to just kind of shut up and listen because she had some valid concerns that I couldn't see. It also made me a better planner because then I need to just stop and listen. And what always resonates in my head is Brad Klontz. I don't know if you guys know Dr. Brad Klontz. He once said, nobody comes into me, like if they're looking for a relationship and says, I'm looking for somebody who's just a really good talker, right? They say, I'm looking for somebody who's a really good listener. And so this process has helped me just go sit back, listen, and let's address those problems. It's made us stronger.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And for that to be the leading reason you all want to get into this, to remember that it will strengthen or could strengthen some of those personal relationships we have. Having a supportive spouse, having a good foundation there is one of the more important things we see correlated and contributing to success and long-term success. I have a lot of empathy for folks that don't have that and struggle with that part of it. But as you create your community that can be a replacement for that, it is so, so important to find a couple people that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can really be honest and vulnerable to be able to have that shared support and vision of you want someone meeting you with that on the other side of the table, whether it's personally or professionally. And that's why this community is so wonderful. Folks, go ahead and drop some more questions, and we'll wrap it up in about 10 minutes and ask folks just to have a dialogue. But what does success look like for you both? Have you already achieved it, and what's next? Based on both your vibes, I would say you both are successful and energetically, but what do you think?
So I'm sure that many of you have heard of the gap and the gain, right? So this is the notion that we focus so much on, what we haven't yet achieved versus looking backwards and, celebrating what we have achieved. And the thing about success is that it may be that moving horizon. Mm-hmm. And there's always something else to put in the success bucket. I feel really good about what my family has achieved and where we are at this moment in time. And I'm working really hard on staying focused in that moment. I have you mentioned journaling. I have a win tracker app on my phone that, every day my husband and I log mood. So we log our mood for the day and I put my wins in there. And so I'm keeping track of those wins all along. And I think success looks like me being really excited about every day and what's on my calendar there that day. And feeling energized for where things are going and the little minutia progress that I made on this project or that idea or whatever. And just staying present with the journey. And being in the journey and being in this wonderful evolution of myself that I have created for myself instead of being so focused on some moving horizon.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I think success it's in multiple facets, right? There's different areas. Yes, I feel successful in some of those. And that there are still goals that I have that I'm shooting for. But I think that if you ask that to me when I'm like 95 years old and like dying, I would probably be like, there's still goals that I'm trying to hit. To Laura's point, I think just reflecting on the successes that you have had, because otherwise you're never in the moment. You're always shooting for the future. That creates anxiety, right? So I can't remember something like, show me somebody who lives in the future. I'll show you someone with anxiety, or the other way, reverse that. Or show me somebody who lives in the past. Or with depression, that's someone in the past. Be in the now. So enjoy your success. Yes, I feel successful, but it doesn't mean there's still things that I'm shooting for. And I've had failures too, but that's why I am who I am. So I think that's great.
Beautiful. An audience member wants to know about what keeps moving. Oh, all right. If you could go back and talk in time and talk to yourself 6 to 12 months before you were launching, what would you say? Jay?
Yeah. So perfectionism is not good. Not good. In fact, I had this thought today. So the speaker this morning, right, she said, she made a comment, kind of just like a side comment, said CDs are dying or they're gone, right? And I thought that was interesting as a musician because compact disc offered...
I was thinking the same thing.
Compact discs offer the best quality there is. MP3s are compressed. They're not as good of an audio experience as a CD. And it made me think of the perfectionism would make me want to always create the CD for people. And that's not what they're wanting. That doesn't meet their needs. And if I don't create music until it's on a CD, I'm missing the opportunity to just give them an MP3, and they are fulfilled with that. So don't fall for perfectionism. Go out, do MP3 quality work if you can. It's still meeting what they need. You are still helping. And that's not to say don't shoot for CDs, but do it. Put yourself out there, and then perfect the process. That's what I would tell myself.
That is a damn good analogy. I love that. Okay, so 6 to 12 months before launching, I was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed with what are all these acronyms? What are all these structures? What are the pros and cons? What are, like, analysis paralysis? I felt like I wasn't going to be able to figure it out. And so if I could go, back to that drive, and right following that drive when I started having all these phone calls and all these Zoom meetings and whatever, trying to figure it out, I think I would just remind myself, you'll get this figured out, right? You got to go through the process of exploring and getting all of your questions answered and building I use the analogy Lego blocks of information in your mind in order to construct the thing that you want to construct, and just, embrace the process.
Great. There's a question about how long it took you to kind of start your firm after finding XY. When was your first XY call? When did you join? Let's do that timeline.
Yeah, so mine was 2018. That's when Kaylee and Taylor introduced me to Maddy. It was 4 years before I launched my own RIA, but it was only a year before I started. It inspired me. I wanted to do something. And it's been very helpful because there's so many blueprints. It's one thing I have to remind myself too, is while we are unique, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Like, you can have a really cool car, just use tires. They're already there for you. So.
Great. Laura?
Yeah, so my time frame was, my first conversation was about 12 months prior.
Okay.
Yeah, so 1 year, and I had no idea who XYPN was before that year ago mark.
Game changer. What are you both most excited about in the next 12 months? What do you have on your docket, personally, professionally? Laura, go ahead and start us.
So many things.
Oh, who would have guessed?
I know, so many things. I am super excited about continuing this conversation around the topic that I am talking about, and I'm super excited about all the new ideas that show up in my head every day that I get to, put out in content. I'm super excited to see where my SEO goes. I'm super excited to see where my podcast numbers go. I'm super excited to have somebody come up to me someday in the future and say, your podcast changed my life, right? Because that's what they do. So, and then of course, I'm super excited about moving in my tiny house full time and being able to go out for hikes instead of, the current situation in Florida that I'm in. I apologize if I've berated Florida too much today. And so just that alignment, I'm super excited about bringing all the pieces of me together.
Congrats on that.
Very much.
12 months. XYPN Live 2024.
There we go. Good answer, Jay.
Where's it, Maddy?
Can't tell you. Couple hours. Or no, tomorrow, I think.
I have a lot of things. Just 2 days ago, I got told that my wife may be pregnant. That's pretty exciting. Yeah, so that'll be fun, I hope. See me in 2024, and if I'm exhausted, I'll be like, well, I didn't.
Yeah, you may not be here next year, buddy.
But it'll be a good experience, I'm sure. Yeah. And also just I think I have some things on the horizon. So I've stayed kind of in more of the ethereal most of this time, but I think really I'm in the process right now where And I share this with you because I hope this can encourage you, that I may be merging with another firm in Texas in December and then acquiring them. And just so you know the background on that, it literally was somebody who posted on NAPFA and said, I'm looking for somebody who has this, 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 and this. And I went, I got one of those. I'm going to write him. And then all the people who had this, 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 and this just weren't persistent enough. So they fell off. And it's like, hey, buddy, you got to take me. There's no one else. So but it does. It's really encouraging. So I'm excited to do that. But it was my business, actually. He said, it was your business experience that you had done it yourself. You're familiar with some of the stuff that he was drawn to say, yeah, let's try to merge. So
Great. Laura, I think this question's for you. Can you talk more about what it takes to create a podcast?
Yeah, so my podcast is my largest expense because, as you know, I think is mentioned a couple of times on the XY podcast, there's like 26 steps or something Kitsa says to producing a podcast. So I'm outsourcing the production. So that's an expense to me. Time-wise, it's a weekly podcast. I find my guests or create, I do have a couple of solo episodes out, but I find my guests, I have automated Calendly scheduling with them, I record with them, and then I upload it to the vault and off it goes to production. So it is the best part of my job right now is having those really fun conversations with people in my niche.
did you say the name of your podcast?
Less house, more moolah.
Less house, more moolah.
I love that.
Yeah, and as my background being in the recording studio all the time, just so you know, you open up my closet and there's a ton of different microphones that I've used as a musician. I use none of them. I use the Blue Yeti.
We love the Blue Yeti.
Yep, plugs right in USB. It sounds great. Don't get caught in making it have to sound perfect. I do the same thing. I outsource. We haven't actually launched anything, but it's called For the Wealth of It. It will be. So, but it's, honestly, what's the key to doing it? Is that what it was? Can you talk more about what it takes to create a podcast? Do it. The end. Literally just start recording.
I like both your energy around it, and I think it's a good reminder that even if you're in the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clients, you need to have calls where you leave feeling really good about what you just talked about. And a podcast, when you're talking about your niche or things you're passionate about, you're sharing your voice, you're being an expert, even if you were still in the doldrums of building your business, you can walk away at a Thursday morning being like, God, that was a good conversation. It's those conversations that you want either with a study group person or anyone else that you can leave energized from.
And I think that's another place for us not to get too focused on perfectionism too, create the content, get it out there. I think it's Carl Richards that talks about the book, The Practice, which is you make and ship the work, you make and ship the work, you make and ship the work. You don't get worried about the outcome, right? And so with a podcast, you put it on your calendar, you get it scheduled, you record the episode, you get it out there. Every podcast that I have followed that has literally changed my life, it's not the same 2 seasons in, right? It's much better. But the beginning episodes gets you that practice and you get in the habit of doing that thing and you just have to do it, even if it's not perfect, and just get it out there.
No, in fact, it shouldn't be perfect, right? That's how we're going to learn. And that's the same thing. If you listen to some of my recordings, not even podcasts, but music, I'm like, oh my God, that's terrible. At the time, I thought it was great. But you learn, and it's awesome. Yeah. And then just something I've heard, and you would know more because you guys got, you got it dialed in with the podcast. But I've heard, doing it on a regular, releasing it on a regular basis. So if that's helpful at all, it's maybe have a bank of them, record them, and then start releasing it so that the algorithm can kind of figure out, okay, this is when they come out. This is when people are going to listen to it. So,
yeah. Great. Wrapping this up, folks, if you've got more questions, I'm going to just stick with the Slido. If we run out of time, that's it. Tips for finding your first 5 clients. Where are we with that, and where'd you find them? Laura?
So I think most of us, our first few clients are friends and family, right? So the people that will, trust us to be the guinea pigs. For sure, I was fortunate to have some prior relationships that fit within my niche that followed me. when I was first building as an advisor 5 years ago, my first few clients came from, all those networking hours. And I really believe in just being where the humans are, right? And letting them know that you care. And there's lots and lots of other podcast episodes about, how you show your value to people. But yeah, you got to spend time with humans to do that, and that's a struggle for me sometimes.
Yeah,
Good advice.
I think it's putting yourself out there and letting people know, because sometimes we stay reserved. Maybe that imposter syndrome. Maybe it's just because we're listening. We like to learn, but you have to let people know what you are doing for them. So if I say DIYers, who does everybody think of? And I think of Cody Garrett because he puts it out there, right? So there's a lot of people that they come to my mind because they tell me what they're doing. And all of a sudden, if somebody comes in or a DIYer, I'm like, I don't do that, but I have somebody. Cody and I have talked once. So that's helpful, letting people know. And that goes within your smaller circles too. And I think also just approaching it with confidence. You deserve to be confident. And I promised Brian that I would put him on the spot at one point, but I'm going to tie this into this.
Come on up, Brian.
Yeah. This morning, he wakes up. So these last 3 days, we've been talking, and he's questioning things. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And he's like super pensive. This morning, he wakes up, he goes, today's the day we get our pens.
Pens?
Pens, because of the swag.
Oh, right.
And I was like, where is this confidence coming from? And it really made me think, that is how you should be approaching it. Today is the day I get my pens. And later on, I told him, I said, when you said that was really inspiring. He goes, and I'm going to get the best pens.
Oh, great. I never pick up the pens. Noted.
So put yourself out there and put it out there like that.
Okay, we're down to the last 4 minutes, folks. I've seen this question on our AMA for Alan and Michael to upvote if this is important to you. But how do you handle the fact that mistakes can have real tangible impacts on your clients? I'm personally interested in this. That seems like a heavy weight to carry.
What a heavy question. Yeah. Yeah, I think that we should sometimes when you're within an industry, whatever it is, there's this mastery complex. I think that's what it's called, right? Where we think that everybody else knows what we know. And so we assume that everybody else has the same, skill set of, whether you contribute to a traditional or a Roth IRA and, all the things. And so certainly none of us are perfect, and we're never going to remember every single tax code nuance or, what have you. And so we will all make mistakes all the time, but our intention is to do a really good job, and we're going to do a heck of a better job than the people who hire us would do on their own. And so just understanding that we're making measurable plus differences and always learning and working as hard as you can to be the best that you can is important, but none of us are ever going to be able to have all of the right information at the right moment. And that's just the fact of being a human being.
Yeah, that last bit is exactly where I was going too, is sitting into that connection with those people means that they're going to understand that you're human as well, right? Now, if I cost them $1 million, my humanity's kind of out the window. But they at least can hopefully understand me, understand I was trying my best. So there's always that. I haven't had that happen yet, but inevitably I am going to make a mistake, and I hope that my relationship with them is deeper than just transactional. Maybe I've helped them in other ways, and they're like, okay, darn. So sitting into those relationships is really important. Also, to Laura's point, what came to my mind is who out here knows what a 403B is? All right, so most of you, 403B. Go ask your clients the same thing, right? They have a 403B. They call it a 401k, right? So remember that you are the expert in their eyes. And so, yes, you can make mistakes, but also don't let that stop you, because chances are what you're going to do is a far lesser mistake than what they're going to do.
Well said to both of you. Just a little perspective, XY's had our E&O policy for, I think, 7 years. I don't think there's ever been more than one claim to it, if there was even one claim. So compared to industry average, our advisors are exceptionally good at not messing up to the point that you would need E&O insurance. I think always remembering and reminding your clients that if you ever do get to a challenging question or scenario, that you're part of a network like XY with other 1,700 advisors that you can lean on for technical expertise, that you participate in study groups, that you do professional development. There's a lot there that can go with developing that kind of trust that you need in your client's eyes. So I hope everyone found this to be a really insightful conversation. Certainly was fun. We did not know that these two had this kind of personality as we stacked them together, but this was a really dynamic duo. I hope you two stay in touch. Good luck to your tiny house adventure. Good luck to you and your wife. And good luck to all of you. If you'd like to talk after this, we can happily stick around. I think both of these wonderful members will make themselves available over email, tune into their podcasts, things like that. Eli and Chris are in the exhibit hall if any of you are considering joining XYPN and want to talk timeline or logistics. But best of luck. Glad you're here.
Thank you.